Hey, welcome back. Today we're gonna do a brew day on the Spike Solo. So this is a very nice brewing setup. Hit the market last year and I'm very excited to get to show you. We're gonna be making a 5-gallon kit, another kit from More Beer. This particular one is the Torcido Mexican Style Lager. So it's a Mexican style lager because I am not in Mexico brewing it in the traditional ways. So here we go, let's get into it. So the Spike Solo is, again, another all-in-one recirculating system. It does come with a pump. I'm gonna use the pump that I already have. This is not the one that comes with it. We're going to be doing a 5-gallon batch, although this particular system can do 10-gallon batches, 220. For the power controller, the PID is very accurate and the element is very fast. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like on the inside. I've already added my waters here, so you're gonna go through your profiles when you're calculating the recipe. Again, Brewfather, Beersmith, all of those are gonna tell you how much water you need to add, and most of those have the profile for the Spike Solo already built into them. So we're gonna talk about water in a separate video. Again, I used reverse osmosis and built that up to a international pale lager, which the Mexican lager falls into. So here we go. Inside the system, you've got an insert. There's hooks on the back for once we have mashed and recirculated for the hour that is recommended by the kit. This lifts out, there's 2 clips in the back, and the bottom is a false bottom. So like you've seen on the Clawhammer Supply where we used a basket, this guy has a false bottom built right into this insert. So on the inside, there's a heating element and the recirculation ports. This guy has a port up on the top that's going to let the wort flow through the top, fall through the grain bed, and I'll show you how that works. So this brew day should be pretty straightforward. On the recipe, this uses 7 pounds of Viking Pilsner malt, 1.5 pounds of flaked corn, and 8 ounces of Wehrmann Cara Hell. So I plugged all of those into my recipe to know what the mash pH is gonna be, and that allowed me to do the water calculations like I just said. A small fraction of the hops that we used for the Pliny kit, this only has 1 ounce of crystal for 60 minutes, and then 1 ounce of Saaz hops at the 10-minute mark, and that is it. There's no dry hopping, there's no whirlpool, so much smaller grain bill and much smaller hops because true to style, it's not a very hoppy beer. And then the only other addition is gonna be our clarifier, and the kit comes with that as well. So you've got everything that you need. I'm gonna use L17 Harvest from Imperial Yeast to ferment this guy, and I think it's gonna be fantastic. So let's get to it. I gotta mill my grains. The specialty grains on these kits usually come pre-milled, and the flaked corn, I'm also not gonna run through the mill because it's already, well, flaked. So you'll see that, and then we're gonna add those. So I just need to mill the 7 pounds of Viking Pilsner malt. So let's do that. So the Viking Pilsner malt is a European malt, and this particular one, I'm just gonna read it off of the front. It's got a malty, slightly nutty and sweet, made from 2-row spring barley. It is a great base malt for all beers. That's what it says right on the package. It is 1.7 Lovibond, which is the toast level that's on it. And as you can see, it's a little bit darker than the 2-row that we used yesterday. This has a really great flavor profile. So as always, I like to taste it. And that's gonna actually give me an idea of what it's going to be like in the beer. So you can really taste the character of these malts. I truly love Pilsner malt. All right, so here we go with the grind. So here it is all ground up. My mill is set for the brew in a basket, so it's a lot finer than a traditional mill. We're gonna see if this thing gets stuck, but I don't expect any problems. Okay, so I'm gonna add these directly back into this. Okay, here you go. I'll show you the difference in the mill. This is what they're gonna come milled like from your homebrew shop for traditional grain crush. And this is what mine look like. So you can see they're far more crushed, and it just is what it is. It depends on the system type that you have. If you're doing brew in a bag or brew in a basket, you're gonna want that finer crush. And we're going to add the corn directly into the mash. Some folks like to add those later. Corn actually tends to get kind of gooey until it reaches a certain temperature, and then it kind of releases that stickiness. I've never had any issues with that, but I have heard some guys complain about it, so they'll just add it later or pre-steep it and add that. I add it directly into the mash. And the smell of this is fantastic. The corn is actually what makes this a Mexican style lager. So you kind of get that tortilla flavor. I really dig it. If you didn't put that in, then you're just looking at a traditional European pale lager. So I'm gonna go ahead and mash in. So like I've mentioned before, these big systems like this, ideally you would do it on something that's like a knee-high table, like a coffee table height. For the purposes of the recording, we're doing it up on the table so you can see it, but because of its size and having to lift the basket out, it's gonna be easier if it's either on the ground or on a lower table. It is what it is. So bear with me as I reach overhead to do this stuff. Yeah, for your setup, I mean, you may want to consider doing it on the floor. So, mash paddle. We don't have any dough balls, so now I'm going to set up the recirculation portion of this. Quick connects are fantastic. It is just that easy. So this port is open. I'm gonna open up the recirculation butterfly valve and then turn on our pump. Over here, again, this controller has a plug directly into the back where my pump is plugged in so that you can control it from here. That can also be used for other accessories if you want, but really these all-in-ones are made to do this. So the recipe kit recommends mashing at 147, at 148, so that's what I have it set to. That PID is gonna control the temperature. The probe back here is just gonna talk constantly to this. It's gonna raise the temperature of the coil and keep us on point. So here's the pump. That is flowing fantastic. It's essentially just pulling the water from the bottom, putting it into the top so that it can recirculate and pull all of the fermentables out of the grains that we can get. I'm gonna go ahead and start a timer, and in the meantime, I'll show you what the recirculation on this looks. Okay, so we've got our hour of recirculating the mash. I've given it a couple stirs as it goes. I'm going to turn the heating element off. One note about this system that I guess I should have known before I started. It can do 5-gallon batches, but this PID is set to monitor the temperature for 10-gallon batches. So that would be, 12, 14, 15 gallons of wort, depending on the recipe that you're making. So I've been manually turning it off because it wants to climb higher than the set temperature. So just something to note. It's not that big of a deal. Right now, I'm going to turn the pump off. So let's do that. And then once this level goes down, as it is already done, I'm gonna close this off, unhook our basket, And then we're gonna move around to the back and I'm going to lift the basket out for our mash out. It's gonna drain out of that basket. Okay, so this insert has 2 hooks on the back that come up and just rest right on the edge of the kettle, which makes it really nice. With the claw hammer supply, with the Brewzilla, I have to do other things to get that basket or the malt pipe or whatever you want to call it to rest on there. This one's really nice with those hooks. So I'm gonna go ahead and lift it out. If we were doing a full 10-gallon batch, this would be a lot heavier than it actually is. And this recipe has a very small grain bill for what it is. So that was relatively easy. I did that on purpose so that you wouldn't watch me struggle on camera. So we're just gonna give this a couple minutes. I'm gonna move over to the other side and turn our element back on and get us up to a boil. I guarantee you this is gonna be fast. I'd say 15 minutes and it's gonna be at a boil, and then we can do our first hop additions. So this controller is pretty straightforward. I'm just gonna hit the up button and change my numbers to 212 degrees. So move over and go like that, and then hit set. And I'm gonna turn my element back on, and we're gonna watch these numbers climb pretty fast. So super simple to use. You kind of can't go wrong. All right, so true to form, this guy is blazing fast. That only took about 10 minutes to get this 5-gallon batch up to a boil. So after the mash, I've got 7.5 gallons left in here, and that will boil off during the hour. So to remove the malt pipe, I just lift it up and I put it down. I've got the like a Brute trash can lid over here, and then again, I'll just get rid of the grains and rinse this while she's coming up to a boil. So let me show you what that looks like. Easy peasy, there's nothing to it. I am already at a sub simmer, and the temperature control says I'm at 203, so I expect I will be boiling within 4 minutes. So I'm gonna add in my hop spider. So this guy sits in there for the hops. That way I'm not clogging anything, keeping it clear. Again, some people just let it rip and drop all the hops right directly into the wort. This first hop addition, make sure that's not sitting right on the heating element. The first hop addition is 1 ounce of crystal, and this is gonna boil for the full 60 minutes. And again, the Saz will be for the last 10 minutes of the boil. And yep, sure enough, there she goes. Let's do our first hop addition. 1 ounce of crystal. This is first boil hop. Right into the spider there. I'm gonna give it a little zhuzh, make sure that they're all wet. Now we're gonna let this go for 1 hour. I'm gonna set a timer for 50 minutes because remember, when we look at the hop times, the number that's next to the hop, that is how much time it needs to be in the boil. So if we're doing a 60-minute boil and it says Saz 10 minutes, that's not 10 minutes after the 60 minutes that the first addition has been in. That's with 10 minutes remaining in the boil. So I'm gonna set a timer for 50 and I'll see you then. Okay, so we have gone our 50 minutes with the crystal hops. The boil is nice and vigorous on this kettle. I'm very pleased. It smells absolutely wonderful. So today I'm gonna show you basically the setup. So we are ready to add our 1 ounce of Saz pellet hops. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Set myself a 10-minute timer, and during that time, we're going to be sanitizing the coil. So let me add these hops real quick and then I'll talk you through that. Always smell them. Always take that chance. Come on. It's awesome. All right. So right into the filter. I'm going to grab it. Just kind of give it a stir. Make sure everything is perfect. Flowing nicely in there. Okay. So as it comes to, that's my timer going off for our 10-minute warning. Set another for 10 so we don't lose track of time. So this is the Hydra chiller from Jaded. So you've seen the plate chiller where it's overlapping plates that runs the wort through counter to the water. This version instead is called an immersion chiller. So the immersion chiller goes in directly into the kettle in contact with the wort, and you're gonna cycle water through it. So groundwater temperature right now is about 60 for me. So to drop this from 212 to pitching temperature, so anything under 80 is about good. Ideally, you would get it to the exact temperature that you want to go to. So this is a Mexican lager, and the kit recommends a fermentation temperature of 54 degrees. So a lager is kind of unique in that generally they ferment at lower degrees. Now the guys over at Brewlosophy have pretty much debunked that, where you can do warm fermented lagers. For this one, it doesn't hurt anything for me to stick with the proposed temperature because I have a glycol system, so that allows me to drop down. If you have a fermentation chiller or a fermentation chamber like a refrigerator that you can get down to that temperature, it doesn't hurt anything to do it the traditional way. But if you do not have temperature control and you're stuck basically using like the temperature of the inside of your house, so a bucket with an airlock and that's just it, you put it in a closet, you're gonna be fine. I highly recommend looking up the Brewlosophy episodes and blog posts on warm fermented lagers. I do it all the time. I am not afraid of doing that, but for the purposes of this, I'm just gonna stick to the recipe, time tested, so we're gonna go with that. So as I have now 8 minutes left in the boil, I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy in there so he can sanitize in the boil. So the only consideration with this kind of system is that I don't want that weight to be directly on the heating element that's sticking inside the kettle. So I try to prop it up against the thermo well. That's a lot easier to replace if for whatever reason it breaks, but I've never had issues with that before. I just want to point it out. So another thing to note is today I did set up, this is just a basic Brute trash can that you can pick up from Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. This is the water out, this is the water in. So I'm gonna hook up the water in real quick. Again, many people just use regular hose connections, but I have water plumbed into the brewery so that I can use quick connects for everything. It just makes life a whole lot easier. I do connect that now because sometimes if you've got water left in here, as soon as it hits the boil, it's gonna expand and start to bubble out, and it's not that fun to get hit in the face with boiling hot water. So everything is hooked up. This is going to drain into the trash can to pick up all of the wastewater that's gonna come off. So instead of sending it down the drain, I'm gonna use that to clean my kettle, clean all my equipment, and then water plants or let the kids play with it. So that works for me, and I plan on continuing to do that until I can find a better way to save that runoff water. So we're gonna go ahead and put it in. So let me explain what's going on here. Basically, line in, line out. This actually splits into 3 separate coils, as you can see here, or actually here. So essentially what's happening is you've got a whole lot of surface area of copper exposed to the wort. There are a lot of basic wort chillers that come and it's a single line of copper. It measures by length. Essentially here I'm getting 3 individual small wort chillers all into one. It's very efficient for what it is. So if I was doing a 10-gallon batch, I would use my plate chiller just because I feel like that uses the least amount of runoff water and gets the job done faster. So we're gonna do that. Other than using a forced chiller, so like these, an immersion or a plate chiller, you can also just do a bath or just let it set until it comes to room temperature. So there's other chilling ways, and we're gonna talk about those in a different video, but for this purposes, I wanna show you how the immersion chiller works. So here we go. I'm just gonna put it right in. It's gonna drop the temperature in there right away, so I'm gonna lose my vigorous boil just for a minute, but that element is gonna kick back on and do that. So it's inside the wort, and that boil is actually sanitizing it. So let's give it a second. We've got 5 more minutes on the boil with the 10-minute hop addition, which is a perfect time to throw in our Kick Carrageenan, which is a different kind of kettle fining. So this says it binds haze-forming proteins, causing them to flocculate out of solution. What that means is this will help me get clearer beer at the end. With a lager, it's very important to me. I like clear beer. I want to be able to read a newspaper through it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add this one now. This tablet is a half size, so we're gonna put the whole thing in. You just pay attention to the directions for your particular one. So we are back at a boil. I'm gonna let this sanitize, and then in 5 minutes, we're gonna cut off the heating element and start chilling. Okay, so here we go. We are at time to turn the element off and start the chilling process. Again, the chiller's been sitting in there sanitizing just with the temperature of the boil. I have my fermenter. Today we're gonna use the Spike Brewing Flex Plus. I absolutely love these fermenters. They're fantastic, and they have the coil that goes down inside that runs the glycol for temperature control, which is absolutely amazing. So I don't need to chill this all the way down to 54 degrees, which is what we're gonna ferment at. I just wanna get it to like under 100. I'll hook it up to glycol, and in like 20 minutes, it'll be down at fermentation temperature so we can pitch the yeast. I'll show you that part too. So right now, I'm going to kill the element. You'll see the steam is gonna die down pretty significantly, and now I'm going to turn on the water into the immersion chiller. So we'll do that, and we're gonna get to watch the temperature drop pretty quickly. Okay, so you can hear that running in the background. The water is just, again, going through all three of those individual lines connected to one in and one out, which makes life very easy. This is a very efficient chiller. To make it even more efficient, I'm gonna take my mash paddle, which I also put into the kettle to sterilize, and I'm gonna move that water around, or that wort around. That's gonna help move that surface area and chill even faster. So the name of the game here is how much heat can you transfer into that copper, and the water coming out of it is gonna pull that temperature down. All right, so to give you an idea, we're already down to 176 degrees from 212. It's only been on for what, like 20 seconds, 30 seconds? Like I said, this is great. Another way that you can do this is just pick the chiller up and down and just kind of get that wort flowing in there. And that will reduce the temperature in your sauna significantly, and it's working the way it should. 165. So we'll just go 60 more degrees to get it under 100. And then I'm just gonna direct transfer. So out of this port, I'm gonna go straight into that, like I've used a hose and a pump before. For this, I don't see any need to hook all of that stuff up. I'm just gonna let it slosh in there. So again, that's that oxygenation that we've talked about. And you'll see what that looks like as we transfer. Okay, so chilling to get under 100 degrees was my goal. That took under 8 minutes with this chiller. Like I said, it's very efficient. So I have turned off the source water. I'm going to take the chiller out and put it directly into that bucket where I collected all that runoff water, so that it's immediately getting a nice rinse. No hops or any kind of debris is gonna be stuck to it, making cleanup less labor intensive. So I'm just gonna take this directly out, let it drain. Again, back to the argument of having this knee high on the table. Put it into our bucket back here. Nice warm water. And now I'm going to set up to transfer from the front. I'm gonna be using this short hose. I'm gonna connect it to that front port, but remember, we need to sanitize everything. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like. Okay, so we are good to go. Like I said, I'm gonna use this. That just gives me direction in here. So I'm gonna sanitize this first. Just gonna run out the bottom. Now remember, we're cold side, so everything that we touch has to be perfectly sanitized. Got that. Make our hookup. Now I'm gonna sanitize the inside of the fermenter. Get inside the ports for the thermo well and the transfer, and into the front of our butterfly valve. Make sure you close that so that you don't shoot all your brand new wort all over the floor. Again, that's a Star San. It is a no rinse, and we're ready to rock. So it comes out. As we transfer, I may tilt the kettle forward to get the end of it. Again, back to that aerating discussion. I don't personally aerate with oxygen. There's really no need to do that at the homebrew scale. Some would disagree with me, but I've never had any issues, and you're gonna see that this beer is gonna turn out magnificent. So, do you though? While this is transferring, I'm gonna go ahead and get my hydrometer, and we're gonna see what our gravity is. Transferring with a pump may be faster than this, but I used the boil time to clean all of that stuff up. It really, the 4 minutes it may have bought me aren't worth the time savings at the end. Okay, so we did our transfer. I started with 8 gallons of water and took all of my notes out of the Brewfather app for how much volume to use. The profile for the Spike Solo was spot on because I have exactly 5.25 gallons into the fermenter, which is what I wanted. So as long as our gravity lines up, everything is exactly how it should have been. We're gonna verify our numbers, but the next step right now is to put the lid on and then the glycol chiller and hook that up. So let's do that. This lid, this is the pressure pack. And we're gonna go over all of these things in the fermenter video, but essentially this is a pressure relief valve that'll let off at 55 pounds. Here's a gas port, so I can add CO2. That will help with pressure transfers. There's some other things that we can use it for, but for our purposes today, that is what we are doing. So I need to sanitize this. Make sure our gasket is in. Put that right on top. And then we have our nifty lid. So I'm going to cinch this down. These fermenters are rated for pressure. I don't do very many pressure fermentations. It's something that I'm looking to get into. I figure if I'm making good quality beer, why would I add that? I do know that it would help a warm lager fermentation. You can do it faster. So essentially it's going to subdue any of those esters or off flavors that you do not want, which would normally be associated with a warm lager fermentation. As I said, this particular one, I'm just gonna follow the directions on there and follow the instructions from the Imperial Yeast L17 Harvest that I will be using. And even that one, I think it says between 50 and 60 degrees is its preferred fermentation temperature. So I'll be on right in the middle of that at 54. So the next step is our chiller coil. I have the quick disconnects on the glycol that makes hooking it up and taking it apart a lot easier. Otherwise, it's gonna drip glycol on things, and that is kind of an oily mess to clean up. So I put the quick connects on there. Get both sides of the gasket. There's a lot of nooks and crannies on here, so I could probably overdo it, but I want to get all the different angles in there. Get the top. Drop this bad boy in. Connect my tri-clamp. And then, because I like shiny things, I'm gonna clean up all that sanitizer that I just got all over the lid. Any kind of drips of wort that would be sticky. I like everything to be shiny and clean. All right, so that's it for this beer. I'm gonna go hook it up to the glycol and let it come down to 54 degrees. And then I'll meet you back here and we're gonna pitch the yeast. See ya. Okay, so the Mexican lager is in the temperature controlled fermenter, coming down to 54 degrees where we're gonna pitch yeast. I took a sample and let it come up to room temperature. And I'll get you in real close to see it, but we are right on the money, 1040. So the recipe does say it's between 1039 or 1.039 and 1.044. Starting gravity, original gravity. So we're at the lower end of it, and that is absolutely fine. We got the perfect amount of alcohol into the tank. So I have the Beersmith app. It's Beersmith 3, and it's a calculator in there. And I just plug in the 1040 number, and I am gonna run an assumption that it's gonna end at 1010 once the yeast is done doing its thing, which then calculates out to be 3.9% alcohol by volume, which is a perfect low alcohol afternoon sipper for that Sunday when you're sitting outside in the sun by the pool. So very happy with how this came out. Numbers are on the nose, so let's get that yeast in there. Okay, so we're actually gonna pitch yeast into two different batches. This is the Pliny clone that we made yesterday, the 10 gallons of it. So there's actually 2 pouches of pitch right yeast. And this is the Mexican lager that we just made. I'm gonna show you how to do that. So I also wanna point out that in a lot of brewing courses that you're gonna find online or on YouTube, they're gonna make what's called a yeast starter. So that is a Erlenmeyer flask. Essentially, you're taking a small amount of yeast and you're letting it grow up and multiply its cell count so that it is enough. I personally have been using Imperial yeast ever since I discovered them, and I will not make a starter again because I simply do not need to. Regular yeast pouches traditionally have come with 1 billion cells. These come with 2 billion cells. They are so healthy and ready to go that I simply get to skip the whole step of making a starter. It not only makes a mess that you have to clean up, there's also more chance for you to introduce bacteria or any kind of infection, so it just makes life a whole lot easier. So I'm gonna show you the easy peasy way. In the yeast video, I will show you how to make a yeast starter if that's what you would like to do. And we'll talk about the differences between dry yeast, liquid yeast, yeast in a can, yeast in pouches, all of the different ways that you can get yeast. But for our purposes today, I'm just gonna show you how to pitch these. Okay, so the steps for these are listed right on the back. We've got step 1 is to keep it refrigerated. So it's gonna ship to you in an insulated pouch. These ones came in actually a little cooler with ice packs in them so that they're viable and happy. If you're ordering liquid yeast and it is 110 degrees outside and it's been sitting in the back of a UPS truck for 5 days, you really got to make a starter and hope it is still alive. I do not recommend doing that. If you've got a local homebrew shop, go to them. They're getting them shipped to them on ice packs, and they're going to be more viable. So just consider that when doing this. Dry yeast doesn't really care as much. It also should be stored cold, but a couple days in transit from wherever you bought it from isn't going to hurt it as much as this. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready here. So aside from keeping it says step 2 is to shake and knead pouch to homogenize the slurry. So the slurry is gonna end up down here at the bottom, and so it's just exactly what it sounds like. So you're gonna knead it up and then shake it within the pouch. That way, you'll know. It's kind of chunky if not. Then we switch to sanitizing. Remember, cold side, everything has to be sanitized. Star San, no rinse, is gonna go onto my scissors, onto the pouch, onto the ports as I'm putting them back together. You do not want any nasties into your wort because those will multiply just like the yeast is trying to multiply, and that's how you get wild ales. So here we go. I'm gonna take the pouch, sanitize right across the top. Then we're gonna set it here. Sanitize the scissors. Open up my port. It's not touching anything. Right off the top. And now, so this is what that looks like if you could see it. It's kind of a milky look. This one smells like a Mexican beer. I'm not even kidding. So I don't even know what the difference is because not all yeast you can pick the style from it, but that's definitely there. It's like a Corona. All right, and we're gonna go right in to the top. This is why these pouches are called direct pitch, because you direct straight into the wort. So now we're gonna clean this guy up, make sure all these bits and pieces are sanitized. Along with your hands. Look it back up. So this tank is now, the pitch has been made. I'm going to attach a blow-off tube to this side that goes into a container of sanitizer solution. As the yeast does its work, it is going to produce alcohol and carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide needs to go somewhere. It would build up pressure in here, so we want to let it out. It's gonna eat up all the oxygen that's in here, and it's gonna do all of its magic, turning wort into beer. So this one's good. I'm gonna move it out of the way. And now we move on to the big guy. As a double batch, we're gonna use 2 of these pouches. I'm pretty sure that one would be enough, but why not give it all the chances that it can handle? So actually this is the blow off tube for this one. It was resting in the liquid as it was coming up to temperature. We're good now. I'm at 65.6 degrees, right inside the window for flagship. This is an amazing yeast. It's pretty universal and you could use it in just about any ale. It's a medium to low flocculation, and the attenuation is between 75 and 77%. I know that might not mean much to you, but eventually as you get your feet under you, it will. The recommended temperature is between 60 and 72 degrees. My ideal for this is going to be 68, so I'm gonna pitch it, plug this back in, and the heater pad is gonna get it up to that temperature. 65 is right in the middle of that range, so we're still fine. Same play. I'm gonna do these one at a time. And I'm gonna take this blow-off port off. You could take, it doesn't matter which port you take off, there's just a lot more going on inside of this one, so this is, I take off the simple. We're gonna lay that up here. Flagship number 1. Sanitize the pouch. Re-sanitize the scissors. This one has a very different smell from the L17 Harvest. It might seem redundant to do this, but it is very much not. Sanitizing, making sure that everything is clean, like we talked about, is extremely critical. Beer is food, and if you're gonna be consuming it, you would want it to be treated with the same care and respect that, that your food is. That's it. Now we're gonna sanitize these bits. Before putting this fermenter together, I'd run sanitizer through this, completely cleaned this with PBW. So we're just re-sanitizing this little section that's coming into contact with meat. Try clamp back on. All right, folks, that is it. I'm gonna get these connected back up to the ink birds, which will either activate the heating pad or the glycol chiller, depending on what needs to happen, temperature raise or temperature come down. And these guys are gonna be bubbling away within probably 12 hours. I'm excited to show you that.